Hello folks, I thought it would be time to upload a new video. I still have been busy with Crazy House games, and I thought that I would show you a couple of motifs that are easy to remember that will help you to score lots of easy victories. I will show you 3 checkmating patterns, but probably a bit beyond that, about a bit of attacking strategies and stuff as well. The first game I will show you from the get-go because it is an ultimate example of how not to play Crazy House as black. What in normal chess we would call the Scandinavian defense is a very poor choice, because Crazy House is all about the initiative, which this opening would give up in normal chess in itself, but in Crazy House it's exponentially worse. Because now not only do I enjoy a great lead in development, but of course it means a larger liberty in where do I drop my stuff. Okay, mistake number 2. Normally you don't like to develop your knights when they can easily be attacked, especially not when they can be attacked by pieces that are already on the board, so I don't even have to drop. Because now you just keep on jumping around while I'm developing my pieces. This is already a really disastrous start. I'm already looking at possible drops here and there, as well as bishop check here. He played knight f6, the most natural move in the position. But it's too little too late. After bishop b5 check, black is already lost, because he doesn't have a sensible way of defending this check or blocking the check, and the reason behind it is the motive that is about to come, because whatever drops on d7 I can put a pawn on e6, and that breaks up the king side entirely. Now ef7 can't be stopped. Thank you, gorgeous. A little bit of rubbish. So yes, black is already on the verge of losing. Please note that pawn d7 wouldn't help this scenario in any way. I still drop on e6. So e6, he took on b5, I took on f7, and that's actually already a false mate. So this is another, well, sorry, not quite. That was his last chance, and this is an important lesson to learn, that just like in chess, excuse me, in Crazy House it's also important to know that recapture is not compulsory. His only way to not get mated in 2 moves, but only in... Actually, he would have gotten mated anyway. Okay, so if king here, then queen check here, that it was made in a few moves. But I still would have done that, because after the text king takes f7, it was just the thematic knight e5 drop f7 mate, which everybody knows from Backhouse, but it's a standard motif in Crazy House as well. So the main point is, a lot of people sacrifice even a piece on f7 for the sake of a similar attack. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If the pawn is still back on e7, it's very nasty to lose our f7 pawn, because then it's just attacked in a way that our pieces can't help at all. It is basically a weakness of a color complex, which in this case is the white color complex that is weak, and it's exploited very easily and quickly. That's it. Alright. Moving on to our next example, this will be an attack against the castled king. I have had a very good, in fact probably winning position from the early part of the game, that I built up to this position where he only has 3 pawns left to drop, and I have got 5 entire armies. In this case, if it's your turn and you can lure your opponent's king out with checks, it almost doesn't matter how much you have to sack. In the end, it's bound to be a mate. The reason why I'm showing you this particular example is because it ends up in a beautiful checkmate. So I sack the queen, king takes, pawn f6. The only specialty of this position is that due to the fact that there are pieces here, normally you would drop a knight somewhere in this position and bring the king out that way, but I couldn't, so I had to drop the spiky ones, as we like to call them. Now obviously the king can't go back because I drop a pawn here and it's made already, so he had to take, and now we just keep on dropping with checks, luring the king further and further out. Going back is again out of the question. So he went to e6. Now I'm absolutely certain that in this position there are a gajillion ways to give a checkmate, but the one that I found here I think is in fact I'm sure that this is the fastest. Not only that, but it's remarkably beautiful. So when you are forcing your opponent's king out in the middle, the only thing you don't want is to let that king go back, because because the further out it is, just like in chess, the easier to checkmate. And if it manages to hide behind, then things can get a little bit more complex than what they should be. And as soon as we realize that, we start to think about, okay, let's give a check that doesn't allow the king to go back to d7. There are not many of them. We can drop a bishop on c8, but that gets taken, or we can drop a knight on c5. And as soon as the idea of dropping a knight on c5 appears in front of our eyes, we realize that actually this is a beautiful mate, because after knight c5 d takes, now the d6 square is available, so if you drop a queen there, it's a checkmate. I would say that this is a somewhat unusual motif and a really nice one, where the only purpose of giving a check here, other than forcing the king not to go home, or rather denying the king to go home, is to force to decoy a piece away so that you can drop on that particular square. A lovely checkmate. And moving on to our last example, this was another very appalling performance by my opponent, but again, it helps us to understand the nature of the game. You can see that he has got slightly more stuff to drop. He has got 2 pawns compared to my 1, and the rest is the same. However, if you look at the position, there are lots of weak white squares around. The king is a bit insecure, and the queen is already up, which is always a target of early attacks. So let's see how I manage to finish this one off rather quickly. I drop the knight on d4. Obviously the intention is to attack the queen and to basically get ready to drop something on e6 next. He dropped back to d7, most likely one of the worst squares. As I said, he played it very poorly, because now whatever I drop on e6, in this case a pawn, I'm threatening to take the queen with a check. That's really the worst possible thing that can happen to you when you have to move very valuable pieces because they are hanging with check. So for this reason, just for the sake of a stupid example, if he had played queen e5 and I then play pawn f4, even that's a better version, because then I'm threatening to take the queen, but not with a check. So technically that gives them 2 moves to do something nasty to me, whereas now he has nothing to do because his queen is hanging with a check. Once again, he found the worst possible square to drop back to. He still should have gone to e7 to cover these squares, because after queen c8, it's a typical case when the king is left alone and is getting mated in a beautiful manner. It didn't matter which way the king went, by the way, because after king d8 it's still mate on c6. So make sure that you try to avoid such weaknesses like this. And actually one of the most typical things that tend to happen in these cases is that you just drop that queen. For example, in this position, although most likely he is lost already, but in such scenarios often they sack the piece back, or even a queen, by dropping a bishop on f7, trying to patch up these weak white squares. But yeah, black's position was rather desperate here. So I hope, guys, you enjoyed these 3 examples. I think that they were quite exciting, and hopefully they will contribute to your crazy house skills. Thanks for watching, and I will be back with more soon. Bye.